Money has a way of revealing the truth about people, especially family. I learned this the hard way while organizing our tax documents that Friday evening. The first receipt I found seemed innocent enough, just another home improvement expense. But as I dug deeper into Mark's desk drawer, my stomach twisted into knots. I'm Sienna, and until 20 minutes ago, I thought I knew everything about my marriage. $48,000? I whispered, spreading the stack of receipts across our home office desk. Custom cabinets, marble countertops, imported tiles, items I'd never approved or even discussed. My hands trembled as I pulled up our joint bank account on my laptop. The transfers were there, carefully spread out over 6 months. Small enough to avoid immediate attention, large enough to drain our savings. Our future. My phone buzzed. A text from Mark. Stuck in traffic. Be home in 30. Love you. I stared at those 3 words, feeling them mock me. The room suddenly felt too small, too warm. The framed photo of our wedding day on the desk seemed to taunt me with its captured moment of trust and promises. Karen, I swear to God, I muttered, already suspecting his mother's influence in this. She'd been pushing for home renovations since we bought the house, always comparing our modest home to Jessica's newly remodeled place. The front door clicked open downstairs. My heart jumped. Sienna? Mark's voice carried up the stairs. Something smells good. I hadn't even noticed the lasagna burning in the oven. Up here, I called back, my voice steadier than I felt. His footsteps on the stairs, then the office door pushed open. Hey, beautiful, what are you? He froze, taking in the scattered receipts, my rigid posture, the laptop screen displaying our decimated savings account. Want to explain this? I asked, holding up a receipt for custom lighting fixtures that cost more than my monthly salary. Mark's face shifted from surprise to defensive in seconds. I was going to tell you once everything was finished. It's supposed to be a surprise. A surprise? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Draining our savings without my knowledge isn't a surprise, Mark. It's a betrayal. He stepped into the room, hands raised placatingly. You're overreacting. These renovations will increase our property value. Mom showed me the numbers. Of course she did. The pieces clicked into place. Let me guess. She recommended the contractors too, the same ones who did Jessica's house. His silence was answer enough. We agreed, I said, fighting to keep my voice level. No major financial decisions without discussing them first. We agreed on that before we got married. These aren't major decisions. They're improvements to our home, our future. He moved closer, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. Don't. The word came out sharp, cutting. Don't try to minimize this. You've been lying to me for months, planning with your mother behind my back. Sienna, please. How much more? I demanded. What else haven't you told me? His hesitation made my blood run cold. Jessica needed some help with her down payment, he admitted finally. Just a small loan. The room spun slightly. How much? $20,000. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom said we could afford it, and Jess was desperate after the divorce. I stood up, gathering the receipts with shaking hands. I need some air. Where are you going? To clear my head, and to figure out how I'm married to someone who would do this to me. I pushed past him, down the stairs, grabbing my keys from the hook. Sienna, wait. We need to talk about this. But I was already out the door, the evening air cool against my burning cheeks. Behind me, the smell of burnt lasagna drifted from our beautiful house with its secret renovations and hidden betrayals. As I drove away, one thought crystallized in my mind. This wasn't just about money. This was about trust, family, and the slow poison of manipulation. And I was done being the victim. 3 days after discovering Mark's betrayal, I sat across from Karen at her weekly Sunday dinner, watching her orchestrate her latest manipulation. The crystal wine glasses caught the chandelier light, creating prisms on the tablecloth, a perfect metaphor for how everything in this family looked different depending on how you viewed it. Jessica's realtor called today, Karen announced, cutting into her roast with surgical precision. The sellers accepted her offer on the house. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Mark shifted beside me. That's wonderful news, he said, but his voice carried an edge of uncertainty. Jessica beamed from across the table, bouncing little Lily on her knee. I can't believe it's really happening. After everything with Tom. She trailed off, her smile faltering slightly. Of course, Karen continued, dabbing her lips with her napkin. There's still the matter of the down payment. The bank's being rather difficult about the loan, given Jessica's current employment situation. The silence that followed was deafening. I kept my eyes on my plate, counting backward from 10. Mark, Karen's voice dropped to that particular tone she used when she wanted something. I was thinking, since you and Sienna are doing so well. Mom, Mark warned, but she pressed on. It's just that family should help family. And with all the money you're putting into your own renovations, which we didn't approve, I cut in, my voice sharp enough to make Lily look up from her mashed potatoes. Karen's smile tightened. Darling, sometimes we need to think beyond our immediate comfort. Jessica needs a stable home for Lily. And I need our savings for our future, I countered. The future Mark and I planned together. Sienna? Jessica leaned forward, her eyes wide and pleading. I wouldn't ask if I wasn't desperate. Tom's being impossible about child support and maybe because you maxed out his credit cards before the divorce? The words escaped before I could stop them. The table fell silent. Mark's hand gripped my knee under the table. A warning or support, I couldn't tell. I don't think, Karen said icily. That's appropriate dinner conversation. Neither is asking for another $20,000 when you already convinced Mark to give away our first $20,000 without consulting me. Jessica's face crumpled. You told her about that? Of course he told me, I said, though Mark had done no such thing. The flash of guilt across his face confirmed my suspicion. There was more he hadn't revealed. Perhaps. Karen set down her wine glass with deliberate care. We should discuss your apparent issues with family loyalty in private, Sienna. My issues? I laughed, the sound brittle. You mean my issues with being treated like an ATM? Or my issues with my mother-in-law orchestrating financial decisions behind my back? Mommy, Lily's small voice cut through the tension. Why is everyone angry? Jessica hugged her daughter closer. No one's angry, sweetie. We're just having a grown-up discussion. About money, Lily said matter-of-factly. Daddy says that's why you and him fight too. The silence that followed was excruciating. Jessica's face flushed red, and Karen's mask of control slipped for just a moment. Mark, Karen recovered first. Surely you understand the importance of family. Your father would have... Don't. Mark's voice was quiet but firm. Don't use Dad to manipulate me. Not tonight. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Thank you for dinner, Karen. We should go. Sienna, Jessica called as I headed for the door. Please, I don't have anyone else to turn to. I turned back, seeing the desperate plea in her eyes, the calculated concern in Karen's, and the conflict in Mark's. That's the problem, isn't it? You've made sure of that. In the car, Mark was silent for the first 10 minutes. Finally, he spoke. I should have told you about the other money. Yes, you should have. I watched the streetlights blur past. What else haven't you told me? His hesitation made my stomach clench. Mom's been helping Jessica with her credit card payments, using our renovation budget. I closed my eyes, feeling the anger build like a pressure cooker. How much? I don't know exactly. Mom handles the... Of course she does. I turned to look at him. And you let her. The rest of the drive passed in silence, but my mind was racing. Karen thought she was protecting her family, but she was about to learn that some people push back when they're pushed too far. And I was just getting started. The bank statement arrived on a Tuesday, innocuous in its plain white envelope. I almost missed it among the usual bills and junk mail, but something made me pause. The moment I opened it, my hands started shaking. Insufficient funds? I whispered to my empty kitchen. Our account was overdrawn by $8,000. My phone buzzed, Jessica's name lighting up the screen. I let it ring while I logged into our online banking. Transaction after transaction appeared. Spa days, designer boutiques, restaurant charges at places I'd never been. All made with a card I didn't know existed. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Jessica standing there, clutching her designer purse, probably bought with our money. I opened the door but blocked the entrance. We need to talk, she said, her mascara slightly smudged. About the house situation. Funny, I replied. I was just about to call you about our money situation. She blinked, confusion crossing her face. What do you mean? I held up the bank statement. Want to explain why you have access to our account? The color drained from her face. I. Karen said it was okay, that Mark approved it for emergencies. Emergencies like Gucci bags and five-star restaurants? You don't understand. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. After Tom left, I needed to maintain appearances, for Lily's sake. Karen said, Karen said, I cut her off. Does Karen run everyone's lives or just the ones she can manipulate? That's not fair. She's trying to help. Help herself to our money? I pulled out my phone, showing her the transaction list. $20,000 for your house down payment wasn't enough? You needed to steal more? I didn't steal anything. Her voice cracked. Mark gave me the card. He said, Mark what? The voice behind her made us both jump. My husband stood on the walkway, briefcase in hand, face unreadable. Jessica spun around, tears already forming. Mark, tell her. Tell her you gave me the card for emergencies. He walked up slowly, looking between us. Jess, I never gave you a card. But Mom said. She stopped, realization dawning on her face. I laughed, the sound hollow. Let me guess. Karen handled all the arrangements? She said you both agreed. Jessica whispered, that it was temporary, just until I got back on my feet. Mark's jaw tightened. Mom did what? Don't act surprised, I said, turning to him. You let her control everything else. Why not this too? Sienna, I swear I didn't know about any card. Like you didn't know about the renovation costs? Or Jessica's house payment? My voice rose with each question. How convenient that you never know anything until it's too late. Jessica's phone chimed. She glanced at it, then quickly looked away, but not before I caught Karen's name on the screen. Perfect timing, I said. Is she checking to make sure you're following the script? It's not like that, Jessica protested, but her hand tightened on her phone. Then show me the message. I can't. Because she's telling you what to say? I stepped closer. How to manipulate us. Stop it. Jessica backed away. You're twisting everything. Karen loves this family. She's trying to keep us together. By stealing from us? By protecting me, Jessica shouted. Because no one else would. Not Tom, not you with your perfect life and your judgmental. My perfect life? I grabbed her arm as she turned to leave, snatching her phone. The message from Karen glowed on the screen. Don't let them blame you. Remind them about family loyalty. Mark will cave if you cry. Jessica's face crumpled. I never meant. Get out. My voice was ice. And tell Karen her puppet show is over. After she fled, Mark tried to touch my shoulder. I jerked away. Sienna, please, let me fix this. Fix what? I turned to him. The money? The lies? Or the fact that your mother and sister have been playing us like fiddles while you stood by and watched? His silence said everything. I walked into the house, leaving him on the porch. My laptop was still open to our banking page, the numbers swimming before my eyes. But beneath the anger and betrayal, something else was forming. A plan. Karen wanted to play games with money? Fine, but she was about to learn that some games have unexpected players, and I was done following her rules. I found Karen's journal by accident while searching for more bank statements in Mark's home office. It was tucked behind a row of architecture books, leather-bound and well-worn. I shouldn't have opened it, but after everything that had happened, I needed answers. The first entry was dated 3 years ago, right after Mark and I got engaged. Mark's making a mistake. This girl isn't family material. Too career-focused, too independent. Jessica agrees. She'll never understand our family's needs. My fingers trembled as I flipped through the pages. Each entry was a carefully documented strategy session. Ways to influence Mark, methods to undermine my confidence, plans to create financial dependency. Karen had orchestrated everything, down to the smallest detail. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Tom's car in the driveway. Unexpected. I tucked the journal into my bag and went downstairs. Sorry to show up unannounced, he said when I opened the door. His tie was loose, his usual corporate polish fraying at the edges. I need to talk to you about Jessica. I let him in, noting how his eyes darted around the room. Karen send you? Actually, he gave a bitter laugh. I'm here because of Karen. Found out she's been lying to Jessica about my child support payments. My spine straightened. What? Apparently I've been withholding money and refusing to help with Lily's expenses. He pulled out his phone, showing me bank transfers. Except I've been paying more than the court-ordered amount, every month like clockwork. Let me guess, the money goes to Karen first? To manage for Jessica. His jaw clenched. Until I discovered she's been pocketing half and telling Jessica I'm being difficult. I sank onto the couch, pieces clicking into place. That's why Jessica's been so desperate for money, why she needed our help. Karen's been playing both sides, telling Jessica I'm unreliable while telling me Jessica's spending the money on shopping sprees. He loosened his tie further. Found out yesterday when Jessica called me crying about not being able to afford Lily's school supplies. My phone buzzed. A text from Mark. Mom wants us all over for dinner tonight. Important family meeting. Perfect timing, I muttered, showing Tom the message. She probably knows I'm onto her. He stood, pacing. Jessica won't believe me if I tell her directly. Karen's got her completely convinced I'm the enemy. Like she has Mark convinced I'm being unreasonable about family obligations. I pulled out Karen's journal, but I found something that might change things. As I showed him the relevant entries, his face darkened. She's been planning this for years, the loans, the renovations, everything. I closed the journal. Question is, what do we do about it? Tom's phone chimed. Jessica calling. He silenced it. I want custody of Lily, he said quietly. Not to hurt Jessica, but Karen's poisoning everything she touches, including my daughter. Karen's having a family dinner tonight, I said slowly, an idea forming. Everyone will be there. Including Jessica? Especially Jessica. Karen never launches her performances without her favorite actress. Tom's expression shifted, understanding dawning. You thinking what I'm thinking? That it's time for Karen's carefully scripted family drama to go off script? I stood up, decision made. Bring your bank statements. I'll bring the journal. She'll try to spin it, he warned. She always does. Not this time. I touched the journal's worn cover. Because this time, we have her own words as evidence. Every manipulation, every lie, all in her own handwriting. He nodded, reaching for his phone. I'll call my lawyer first, get everything documented officially before tonight. As he left, I sent Mark a text. We'll be there, all of us. Karen wanted a family meeting? Fine. But she was about to learn that some family secrets don't stay buried forever, and some performances end with an unexpected finale. I opened the journal again, studying Karen's meticulous plans. She'd spent years writing our stories for us, pulling our strings like a master puppeteer. Tonight, those strings would snap, and I couldn't wait to see her face when they did. Karen's dinner party was a masterpiece of manipulation. Crystal glasses caught the chandelier light as she worked the room, touching shoulders, whispering confidences. I watched her orchestrate her performance from my corner of the living room, Karen's journal burning a hole in my purse. Everyone, Karen clinked her glass. I have an announcement. Mark tensed beside me. Jessica straightened in her chair, while Tom kept his eyes fixed on his daughter Lily, playing with her tablet in the corner. As you know, Karen continued, family means everything to me, which is why I've decided to sell my house. The room went silent. Mark's head snapped up. What? I'm putting the money toward Jessica's new home. Karen's smile was beatific. And moving in with you and Sienna. The wine glass nearly slipped from my hand. Excuse me? It makes perfect sense, Karen pressed on. The renovation added plenty of space, and this way, I can help manage the household while you focus on your career. She said the word like it was a temporary hobby. Mom, Mark started, but Jessica cut in. That's wonderful, isn't it, Sienna? I felt all eyes turn to me. Karen's gaze was particularly sharp, daring me to object. This was her power play, her way of ensuring complete control over our lives. Actually, I set my glass down carefully, we should discuss the renovations. Karen's smile tightened. What's there to discuss? They're practically finished. The funding is what interests me. I reached for my purse, especially since I found this. The journal landed on the coffee table with a soft thud. Karen's face went perfectly still. Sienna, she said quietly, that's private property. Like our bank account was private before you gave Jessica access? Jessica's gasp was theatrical. That's different, Mom said a lot of things. I opened the journal to a marked page. Should I read what she wrote about you, Jessica? About how she's been pocketing Tom's child support payments? That's enough. Karen stood, but Tom was faster. No, it's not. He pulled out a stack of papers. Here's proof of every payment I made, and bank records showing where that money really went. Jessica's face crumpled. Mom, what is he talking about? He's lying, Karen snapped. They're both lying. Mark, are you going to let them attack me like this? Mark hadn't moved, his eyes fixed on the journal. Those dates, he said slowly. You've been planning this since before our wedding? Planning what? Jessica demanded. Everything. I picked up the journal. How to control Mark through guilt, how to isolate me from decisions, how to keep Jessica dependent on family money. I did it for us. Karen's voice rose. To keep this family together. Mark, tell them how much we need. Stop. Mark's voice was quiet but firm. Just stop, Mom. Karen's facade cracked. You ungrateful. She lunged for the journal, but I pulled it away. Lily. Tom called sharply. Come here, sweetheart. Our 5-year-old niece looked up from her tablet, eyes wide at the tension in the room. As she hurried to her father, Karen made another grab for the journal, knocking over a wine glass. Red liquid spread across the white tablecloth like blood. You're ruining everything, she hissed at me. This family was perfect before you. Perfect, Jessica stood, shaking. You've been stealing my child support, lying to me about Tom. I was protecting you. By making me beg Sienna and Mark for money, by keeping me from standing on my own. Karen's laugh was bitter. Stand on your own? You can't even manage a checking account without me. None of you can. The room fell silent except for Lily's small whimper. In that moment, I saw Karen clearly. Not as the manipulative monster I'd imagined, but as something far more dangerous. A woman so afraid of losing control that she'd destroy her family to keep it. We're leaving, Tom said quietly, lifting Lily into his arms. Jessica, you should come too. We need to talk. But Jessica looked between her mother and her ex-husband, years of manipulation warring with fresh betrayal. Choose now, I said softly. But remember, only one person in this room has been lying to you for years. Jessica grabbed her purse with trembling hands and followed Tom out. Mark stood next to me, his shoulder brushing mine, a small gesture of solidarity that spoke volumes. Karen watched them go, her perfect mask finally shattering completely. You'll regret this, she whispered, all of you. But looking at her now, all I felt was pity, and the certainty that her threat was as empty as the performance she'd been putting on all these years. The real show was just beginning. The police cruiser's lights painted our front yard in alternating red and blue. I stood in the doorway, watching 2 officers talk to Mark while Karen sobbed dramatically on our porch swing. She's unstable, Karen was saying. She stole my personal property, threatened me. That's not what happened, Mark interrupted, but the damage was done. One officer was already writing in his notebook while the other eyed me suspiciously. Ma'am? The older officer approached me. We need to see this journal that's been mentioned. I gripped the door frame. It's evidence of financial fraud. It's my private property, Karen called out, her voice trembling perfectly. She broke into my house to steal it. I'm pressing charges. The younger officer stepped forward. The journal, ma'am. Now. My hands shook as I retrieved it from inside. The moment I handed it over, Karen's tears miraculously dried up. Her smile was razor sharp. Check the garage, too, she said. That's where she's hiding the financial documents she stole from Jessica. That's a lie. But even as I protested, I saw Jessica's car pulling up, Tom right behind her. My stomach dropped. Karen had orchestrated this perfectly. Jessica rushed to Karen's side, while Tom hung back, his expression unreadable. Lily watched wide-eyed from his car. Officers, Karen's voice carried across the yard. I hate to do this to family, but we're worried about her mental state, the paranoid accusations, the theft, the constant threats. The only threat here is you, I snapped, but my voice cracked. The officers exchanged glances. Ma'am, we're going to need you to come down to the station. Mark stepped between us. This is ridiculous. My wife hasn't done anything wrong. Then she can explain that downtown. The older officer pulled out handcuffs, along with the unauthorized bank access and document theft. What unauthorized? I stopped, realization hitting me. Karen had reported the banking investigation I'd done as fraud. She'd turned my own evidence against me. Sienna. Mark's voice was desperate. What did you do? Nothing. I was trying to protect us. But even as I said it, I saw how it looked. The accessed accounts, the copied documents, the stolen journal. Karen had played me perfectly. Officers. Karen stood, straightening her designer blouse. We don't want to press charges. We just want her to get help. Help? I laughed, the sound bordering on hysterical. You're the one who needs help. Tell them, Jessica. Tell them about the child support money she stole from you. Jessica stepped closer to Karen. I don't know what you're talking about. Mom's always handled the finances for me. Tom! I turned to him desperately. Show them the bank records. But Tom wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm just here for Lily, he said quietly. The handcuffs clicked around my wrists, cold and final. Karen's mask slipped just enough to show her triumph. We'll get through this as a family, she announced to everyone, but her eyes locked with mine. Once Sienna gets the help she needs. As the officers led me to the cruiser, I saw Mark's face, confused, betrayed, angry. Karen had won. She'd turned my investigation into proof of my instability, my evidence into proof of theft, my accusations into paranoid delusions. Wait, Mark called out suddenly. I want to press charges too. My knees buckled. Mark, please. The unauthorized access to my accounts, he said, not looking at me. I want that on record. Karen's hand squeezed his shoulder. It's for the best, dear. She needs help understanding what family really means. Through the cruiser's window, I watched my life unravel. Karen comforting Mark, Jessica crying into Tom's shoulder, Lily's small face pressed against her father's car window. Everything I'd tried to protect, everyone I'd tried to save, turned against me by Karen's masterful manipulation. The cruiser pulled away, and I caught one last glimpse of Karen in the side mirror. She was already ushering everyone inside my house, our house, probably to help Mark through this difficult time. I'd thought I was smart enough to beat her at her own game. Instead, I'd played right into her hands, giving her everything she needed to destroy me completely. And the worst part? She'd done it all while making herself look like the caring mother-in-law, just trying to help her troubled daughter-in-law get the help she so desperately needed. The help she'd make sure I never escaped from. The holding cell was cold, but the detective's office where they brought me was colder. Detective Chen studied the documents spread across her desk, bank statements, Karen's journal, and a thick manila envelope I didn't recognize. Your mother-in-law wants to commit you for psychiatric evaluation, she said finally. Of course she does. My laugh sounded hollow even to me. It's her perfect ending. Except, Chen tapped the manila envelope. For what's in here? The door opened. Tom walked in, followed by a man in an expensive suit. This is David Walsh, Chen said. He's been investigating Karen for financial fraud across 3 states. My heart stuttered. What? You're not her first victim, Walsh said, opening the envelope. Just her most recent. We've been building a case for 2 years. Photos spilled across the desk. Karen with different families, different houses, different lives. Bank statements showing patterns identical to what she'd done to us. She finds wealthy families, Walsh explained, usually through charity events or church functions. Then she orchestrates financial crises, positions herself as the solution, and slowly drains their accounts. The renovation contractors? I asked. Shell companies. She gets kickbacks on every project. Tom stepped forward. I figured it out too late with Jessica. By then, Karen had convinced her I was the problem. A knock at the door. Mark stood there, looking exhausted. The bank confirmed everything. Mom's been forging signatures for months. Mark, I started, but he held up a hand. Let me finish. Jessica's here too. She needs to tell you something. Jessica slipped in behind him, her makeup streaked with tears. I found Mom's other journal, she whispered, the one where she wrote about what she did to Dad before he died. The room went still. Mark's father's death had always been attributed to stress-induced heart failure. She drove him to it, Jessica continued, deliberately, for the insurance money, just like she's been trying to do to you, Sienna. We have enough to arrest her, Chen said, but we need your help with the sting. What sting? She's at your house right now, Mark said, moving in like she planned, but she doesn't know about any of this yet. I understood suddenly. You want me to confront her. While we record everything, Walsh confirmed, We need her to admit to at least one fraud explicitly. She won't, Jessica said. She's too careful. She will, I stood up, because I know her weakness now. An hour later, I walked into my own house. Karen was in the kitchen, arranging flowers like she owned the place. Back so soon? Her smile was serpentine. I thought the police would keep you longer. They let me go, I said quietly. After I told them everything. Everything? She arranged another lily. About your paranoid accusations? About Dad's insurance policy. The lily stem snapped in her hands. It's interesting, I continued, moving closer, how history repeats itself. First Dad's convenient breakdown, then his convenient heart attack. And now me, conveniently unstable. You don't know what you're talking about. But her hands shook slightly. 3 other families in 3 other states might disagree. I pulled out Walsh's photos. Or should I say 3 other lives. You've been busy, Karen. Her mask cracked. You think you can prove anything? I protected this family. I gave them everything. You gave them nothing. You took everything. Just like you took Dad's life. He was weak, she snarled, like you're weak. Someone had to be strong enough to do what was necessary. The money, the houses, the renovations. You think that all just happens? You think Jessica could survive without me managing everything? Managing? You mean stealing. From Tom, from Mark, from your own husband. I built this family. She was screaming now. I created everything we have. The contractors, the kickbacks, all of it. And I'll destroy it all before I let you take it away. That's enough. Detective Chen stepped out from the dining room, recorder in hand. We have what we need. Karen's face went white as officers emerged from every doorway. As they led her out in handcuffs, she turned to me one last time. I did it for them, she whispered. Everything I did was for family. No, I said quietly. Everything you did was for control, and now you've lost it all. Through the window, I watched them drive away. Mark's hand found mine, squeezing gently. Behind us, Jessica was crying softly while Tom held Lily. Our family was broken, but for the first time, the breaks were clean. And clean breaks, I knew, had a chance to heal properly. The courthouse steps felt colder than they should have in spring. I watched Karen being led away in handcuffs, her designer outfit replaced by prison orange, her perfect mask finally shattered completely. 20 years, Mark whispered beside me. Minimum. The fraud charges alone would have put her away for a decade, but the evidence about his father's death had changed everything. The jury had taken less than 2 hours to reach their verdict. Jessica stood apart from us, clutching a manila envelope, the last of Karen's financial documents. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached. I found something else, she said quietly. About Mom's childhood. Jess, Mark warned, we don't need to. We do. She pulled out a yellowed newspaper clipping. Because we're not the first family she destroyed. We're the second. The article detailed another perfect family torn apart by fraud and manipulation. Except in that story, Karen wasn't the perpetrator. She was the teenage daughter watching her mother orchestrate it all. She learned it, Jessica's voice cracked. She learned it and perfected it and... She stopped, pressing her hands against her stomach. The gesture was unconscious, protective. That's when I noticed. How far along are you? Tom stepped closer to Jessica, answering for her. 3 months. We're trying again, Jessica said softly. Really trying, without Mom's influence. Mark touched the newspaper clipping. All this time, she was just repeating history. No, I took the clipping from him. She chose to repeat it. There's a difference. A child's laughter cut through the tension. Lily was chasing pigeons at the bottom of the steps, her world already healing in the way only children's worlds can. We're selling the house, Mark announced suddenly. Starting fresh. I studied his face, searching for regret or uncertainty. Found none. What about the renovations? They're tainted, he said simply, like everything else she touched. Jessica shifted uncomfortably. About that. Tom and I can help with the sale. His firm specializes in... No. The word came out sharper than I intended. No more family financial entanglements. Sienna, Tom stepped forward. I understand your hesitation, but... Do you? I turned to face them all. Because I need you to understand something. What happened wasn't just about money. It was about control, about power, about one person deciding she knew what was best for everyone and using whatever means necessary to enforce that vision. We know that now, Jessica whispered. Do we? Because I see us standing here, already trying to arrange things, manage things, fix things as a family unit, and that terrifies me. Mark touched my shoulder. What are you saying? I'm saying we need boundaries, real ones, professional ones. I took a deep breath. I'm saying we need to learn how to be separate people who love each other, not pieces of the same broken machine. Silence fell, broken only by Lily's continued laughter below. Finally, Tom nodded. I know a good realtor, not connected to my firm. I'll send you her number. And Jessica swallowed hard. I'll start looking for my own place, a small one within my actual budget. We'll figure it out, Mark said. But this time, it wasn't a platitude or an evasion. It was a promise. I watched Lily chase another pigeon, fearless and free. She would grow up without Karen's shadow, without the weight of toxic family obligations. But more importantly, she would grow up watching her parents and aunt and uncle learn how to love each other from a healthy distance. The newspaper clipping crumpled in my hand. Karen had chosen to become her mother, to perpetuate a cycle of control and manipulation. But cycles can be broken. Patterns can be changed. As we walked down the courthouse steps, I realized something. Revenge hadn't freed us. Truth had. The painful, complicated truth that sometimes loving your family means letting go of what you thought family should be. Behind us, the courthouse doors closed on Karen's chapter of our lives. But the story wasn't really about her anymore. It was about us, learning to write our own pages, one careful boundary at a time. Lily ran up, grabbing Jessica's hand. Mommy, can we get ice cream? Yes, Jessica said, then caught herself and added, but just a small one, within our budget. It was a tiny thing, that moment of self-correction. But in it, I saw our future, imperfect, independent, and finally, truly free.